It's August of 1941. Casino Estoril in Portugal. A Serbian playboy approaches the baccarat table, places a bet worth $40,000 in today's money. But this isn't just a reckless gamble. He's watching a suspected Nazi collaborator across the table, and every move he makes is part of an intelligence operation. His code name is Tricycle. This is the story of the double agent who warned about Pearl Harbor, helped pull off the D-Day deception, and became the real-life inspiration for the world's most famous spy, James Bond. Born in 1912 to a wealthy Serbian family, Duško Popov was destined for an extraordinary life. Educated at the best European schools, he spoke 5 languages fluently and earned a doctorate in law from Germany's University of Freiburg. It was there he formed a friendship that would alter history with a German student named Johann Johnny Jepsen, who shared his disdain for the rising Nazi regime that later fell in their hands. By 1937, storm clouds of World War II gathered over Europe. Johnny Jepsen, now working for the Abwehr, the German military intelligence, approached Popov with an offer: spy for Nazi Germany. Although Popov hated the Nazi, he had something much cleverer in his mind than to reject the offer outright. He accepted the proposal and at the same time contacted the British embassy in Yugoslavia and proposed a counterplan. He would pretend to spy for Germany, but in reality he'd serve British intelligence as a double agent, under the codename Tricycle, which he reportedly earned from his reputation for juggling 2 romantic partners at once. Popov joined Britain's legendary double-cross system. What made Popov exceptional wasn't just his willingness to serve, but his natural gifts. He possessed a photographic memory, allowing him to absorb complex information without taking incriminating notes. More importantly, he had an instinct for deception, knowing precisely how much truth to mix with lies to make his information believable. By 1940, Popov had established himself as one of Germany's most trusted agents. He built an extensive network of sub-agents across Europe and beyond, all of which were figments of his own imagination. This phantom network existed only in reports Popov fed to his German handlers, who eagerly paid enormous sums for manufactured intelligence. Estoril became Popov's base of operations, a neutral zone where spies from all sides mingled in luxury hotels and casinos. It was here that Popov perfected his style, moving through high society, maintaining multiple romantic partnerships, gambling at high-stakes tables, and living ostentatiously while conducting some of the war's most sensitive intelligence operations. Popov later explained, "A known womanizer and gambler, a man who lived by night and slept by day, was not a man who gave the impression of being careful or security-minded. And that's exactly what I wanted." The Germans, impressed by his apparent success, expanded his mission. They wanted him to now establish operations in the United States. It's August 1941, and Popov arrives in New York, carrying a German questionnaire with specific instructions to gather intelligence about American defenses. The questionnaire requested detailed information about Pearl Harbor, the layout, ship positions, water depths, and torpedo net configurations. To any trained intelligence officer, the implications were clear. Popov sought an urgent meeting with FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover, however, dismissed Popov's warning. Reportedly, he focused more on Popov's playboy reputation than his warnings. Thus, the critical intelligence about Japanese interest in Pearl Harbor was filed away and ignored, leading to one of the most significant intelligence failures of World War II. 4 months later, Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor, executing a plan that closely mirrored details that Popov had provided. Over 2,400 Americans died in an attack that could have been thwarted. Despite this devastating missed opportunity, Popov continued his espionage work in America. sending fabricated intelligence back to Germany while actually serving Allied interests. He would now cultivate a glamorous lifestyle in New York and Hollywood, dating actresses and socialites while conducting his secret work. By 1943, the tide of war had turned against Nazi Germany. The Allies were planning their most ambitious operation, the D-Day invasion of Normandy. For it to succeed, though, German forces needed to be misdirected. This required the war's most elaborate intelligence operation, Operation Fortitude. Popov, through his fabricated networks, supplied convincing reports of a non-existent army, the 1st United States Army Group, allegedly assembling in southeast England under General George Patton. This fictional force, made up of inflatable tanks and elaborate false documentation, was designed to convince Hitler that the main Allied thrust would come at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. The operation succeeded beyond expectations. Even after Allied forces landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, Hitler remained convinced for weeks that this was merely a diversion. He held back vital panzer divisions that could have repelled the invasion, giving Allied forces the foothold they needed. So, how does James Bond come into this? Ian Fleming, creator of WWII, was then an assistant to the director of Britain's naval intelligence. He was directly involved in operations related to the double-cross system. In this capacity, he became familiar with Popov's exploits and occasionally observed the Serbian spy in action. One such encounter occurred at the Casino Estoril in Portugal. Fleming watched as Popov, playing with what appeared to be a reckless abandon, placed an enormous bet at the baccarat table. The sum was staggering, approximately $40,000 in today's money, placed seemingly on a whim. What Fleming did not know was that Popov's bet served a purpose. Popov had spotted a wealthy businessman at the table whom he suspected was working with the Germans. The extravagant bet was designed to establish Popov as a man of enormous wealth and resources, reinforcing his cover story and intimidating his target. Years later, when writing Casino Royale, the first James Bond novel, Fleming recreated this high-stakes gambling scene with Bond in Popov's place. The similarities were unmistakable, down to the details of the game being played. Even Popov's reported quote, "007 seems to have made its way into Bond's file." But what no novel ever captured was the real risk behind the charm. Throughout his career, Popov reportedly faced situations where discovery meant certain death. The most dangerous period came after his friend and initial recruiter Johnny Gibson was kidnapped by the Gestapo in April 1944. Gibson knew everything about Popov's double agent status. Under torture, he could have revealed Popov's true allegiance and potentially compromised the entire D-Day deception. British intelligence had contingency plans ready. If Gibson talked, Popov would be immediately extracted from Europe if possible. But despite brutal Gestapo interrogation, Gibson never revealed Popov's secret. He died protecting his friend and the Allied cause. Popov himself faced numerous close calls as well. During one mission to France, he narrowly avoided capture when German counterintelligence raided his hotel just hours after his departure. The psychological burden was immense. Popov later described the strain of maintaining multiple identities. The hardest part wasn't fooling the enemy, it was remembering which version of yourself you were supposed to be at any given moment. But no matter how many identities Popov balanced or how many times he escaped death, even the most skilled spies face one mission they can rehearse for: what to do when the war ends. It's 1945. World War II finally has come to a halt. The British government recognized Popov's extraordinary service with the Order of the British Empire, but the highly classified nature of his work meant public recognition was minimal. So, leveraging his international connections, Popov established several successful enterprises. He founded a shipping company based in France and maintained business interests across Europe. In 1949, he married a French fashion model named Janine Pernoud. They had 3 sons together and established homes in both France and England. For many years, he was bound by the Official Secrets Act, preventing him from discussing his wartime activities. When Ian Fleming's James Bond novels began achieving worldwide popularity in the 1950s, Popov recognized elements of his own experiences, but remained publicly silent about the connections. It wasn't until 1974, 30 years after the war ended and 14 years after the first Bond film, that Popov published his autobiography, Spy, Counter-Spy. In this memoir, he finally revealed his extraordinary wartime activities and subtly suggested his role in inspiring the Bond character. The book caused a sensation, particularly its revelations about the ignored Pearl Harbor warning. Some historians and former intelligence officials disputed certain details, but the core of Popov's account has been largely verified by declassified documents and other sources. Duško Popov died on August 10, 1981, one day after his 69th birthday. With his passing, one of the most remarkable careers in espionage history came to an end. Yet his most visible legacy lives on, whenever 007 orders a martini shaken, not stirred, faces down a villain across a casino table, or seduces a beautiful woman while on a mission. You're seeing a bit of the real Popov.